Good morning and welcome to the September 14th Victim Compensation Board meeting. For those of you in the room that are appearing on a specific agenda item or wish to offer public comment, the microphones at the podiums and tables are directional and require that you hold them fairly close to your mouth when speaking to ensure your testimony is captured by our audio equipment. For members and participants who are appearing via Zoom, if you cannot hear the presenter, please use the comment feature to note that as staff are monitoring the comments in real time. Council, would you please call the roll?
Member Becton.
Present.
Johnson.
Here.
Chair Ravel.
Present.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Item 1 is the approval of the minutes for the July 20th, 2023 board meeting.
Is there any discussion, additions, or comments from the board members on the minutes? Do I have a motion to approve item 1?
Move to approve item 1.
I second.
Thank you. Is there any public comment on this item via Zoom? Seeing none, is there any public comment on this item from anyone at the Martinez location? Seeing none.
Council, please call the roll.
Motion before the board is approval of the minutes from the July 20th, 2023 board meeting. Member Becton.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Chair Ravel.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Item 2 is the approval of the minutes for the August 24th, 2023 board meeting.
Is there any discussion, additions, or comments from the board on item 2? Do I have a motion to approve item 2?
I'll move to approve item 2.
I second.
Is there any public comment on this item via Zoom? Seeing none, is there any public comment on this item from anyone at the Martinez location? Seeing none.
Council, please call the roll.
Motion before the board is approval of the board meeting minutes from the August 24th, 2023 meeting. Member Becton.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Chair Ravel.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. The next item is public comment. This is the opportunity for the public to comment on items that are not on the agenda. As any items discussed during public comment have not been agendized, the board is not permitted to take action on these matters at this meeting. Please note, if you wish to offer public comment regarding items 5 through 8, there will be a separate call for public comment when each item is heard by the board. For those on the phone, if you previously indicated your desire to offer comments during this meeting, we will be calling on you by name or phone number. For those participating via Zoom, please raise your hand if you wish to offer comment, and we will acknowledge you and let you know when it is your turn to speak. Don't see any?
It appears we have no comment on this item, so I think we can move to item 4.
Item 4 is the Executive Officer Statement, which will be presented by Executive Officer Linda Gledhill.
Good morning. Nice to see all of you. A few items to update you with. This week, the legislature approved new trailer bill language related to the forced or involuntary sterilization compensation or FISP program. The new language, which was signed into law by the governor late yesterday and takes effect immediately, makes a few significant changes to the program, which is still set to end at the end of the calendar year. First, the new language clarifies that each qualified recipient will receive a second payment of $20,000. Previously, the law had stated that the funds remaining would be equally distributed among the approved survivors. The legislature made this change because it has set aside up to $1 million of the initial FISP funds to be available for future legislation that may be adopted in 2024. This legislation would be informed by a currently underway report that evaluates the extent to which forced or involuntary sterilizations occurred at the Los Angeles County General Hospital. The good news is that now that the final payment is set, CalVCB can start sending those second checks more quickly. At this time, we have about 100 approved applications. The new language also clarifies that CalVCB will conclude the program after all applicants have had the opportunity to appeal, but no later than September 30th, 2024. This was a welcome change from our perspective because the prior timeline set forth in legislation was going to make it difficult to complete all appeals and make final payments before the conclusion of the program. We will continue our outreach to try and reach as many potential applicants as possible before the program concludes at the end of the year. I mentioned in July that we are seeing a high number of vacancies at Cal VCB, and that continues. We have a total of 261 budgeted positions, and we are currently have 47 vacancies. The vacancy rate has hit our information technology division especially hard. Our IT division has 37 positions and 13 vacancies, which is roughly 35% of the division. This includes all of our database administrators, as well as our information security officer, who's out on extended leave following a family emergency. While we've brought on retired annuitants to mitigate the risks as we actively recruit, these and other vacancies have impacted our ability to maintain daily operations, as well as move forward with some of the efforts we had been undertaking with the California Department of Technology. I've directed teams to prioritize recruitment and hiring, but wanted to acknowledge the risks associated with critical vacancies at this time, as well as the statewide challenges with filling IT vacancies. Next, in your binder today, we included Cal VCB's annual report for fiscal year 2022-23. This report highlights many of our successes over that year in serving victims, partnering with communities, and striving for excellence. Of significance, the report highlights that because of the increased benefit limits that went into effect July 1st, 2022, Cal VCB provided $6 million more in compensation than the previous fiscal year, even though the application numbers remain the same. We're proud that our work to increase those benefit limits has resulted in victims receiving additional financial assistance. The annual report also shares our accomplishments related to trauma recovery centers, increased mental health provider rates, and simplifying the billing process. We've also highlighted the significant efforts to improve our communication and outreach through our website, identifying opportunities to help underserved communities, and connecting more with our partners in person. We couldn't have accomplished this important work without the hard work of our dedicated staff, and I'm grateful for their commitment to our continuous improvement. Since our last meeting, we've also onboarded Civilian, the company that will be helping us execute the $3 million 3-year outreach campaign, again, meant to target underserved populations. To date, we've shared information with Civilian regarding our goals, the data that evaluates crime rates and compensation levels across California, and feedback from our stakeholders. We also shared the board's feedback from the last meeting regarding developing measurements for success. Civilian is in the process of developing the initial strategy for our review and approval. We continue our partnership with other state agencies with the California State Agency Victim Coordination Council. We are working to mark October, which is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, together. We have a social media toolkit that organizations will use about available resources through Cal VCB and other state entities to support victims of domestic violence. Also in October, we are planning a Northern California regional meeting that will take place at McGeorge Law School. This meeting will give Cal VCB the opportunity to share in-person information with partners and stakeholders. This will be the first large event since the pandemic that we have hosted. We're excited about this and future events that we are planning. Finally, our executive team continues to make concerted efforts to engage employees. We have started an executive newsletter, and we closed out the summer by inviting everyone on staff to an ice cream social. The executive team hosted this social and provided the supplies, the sweet treats for all of our staff, and continue to share gratitude with all of their hard work. The vacancies mean that everyone who is currently employed is working that much harder, and it's important that we acknowledge the hard work that they are doing. So thank you very much. I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Executive Officer Gledhill. First off, congratulations on the FISP trailer bill language. That's terrific. Really important that you're able to continue to reach those populations. I know we talked about the vacancies in July. And I think in IT in particular, it's a problem statewide, just because the salaries are so much higher in the private sector. Do you have a sense of the extent to which, both in IT and elsewhere, the vacancies are a result of people leaving or new positions that are established that you're not able to fill quickly?
there are a handful of new positions that were created, but for the majority, it is folks who are leaving Cal VCB either for promotions or for positions that are full-time telework.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the board?
I did just have one comment, if it's all right, Chair. Really appreciated this annual report and the update, and really wanted to commend the board on the good work for the year, in particular thinking about the expansion of the pilot program to expand access beyond just the core urban centers, which I really appreciate. One thing I did want to call out is it seemed like there was an opportunity in the annual report to look backward and look at the number of claims you see within the program over the course of time versus just sort of an annual snapshot. And something I'd love to see sort of looking forward down the road is how does this year compare to last year and previous years, both in terms of claims and whatever other metrics, honestly, that you as a director feel are appropriate to look at in terms of the success of the program or the functioning of the program over time.
Yeah, thank you for that. We do have supplemental statistics that are not in this, but I'm happy to share them with you that have much more detail, maybe not so much as looking back, but more detail on that year's numbers. Of course, previous annual reports are also on our website. So there's that look back as well. If there's anything in particular you'd like to see, please let me know and we can get that for you.
Okay, item 5 is a legislative update, which will be presented by Deputy Executive Officer Kata Gardenias.
Good morning. This week has marked the end of the legislative session, and the legislature will conclude its work today. Since the report in your binder was printed, there have been changes to the status of several bills. AB 1186 by Assemblymember Bonta, which would have required Cal VCP to distribute payments of juvenile restitution orders, was placed on the inactive file. Additionally, 3 bills were enrolled and will be presented to the governor. AB 56 by Assemblymember Lackey, which would expand eligibility for compensation by Cal VCB to include solely emotional injuries for certain felony violations, was presented to the governor. AB 1187 by Assemblymember Quirk Silva, which would authorize Cal VCB to reimburse services provided by child life specialists, was presented to the governor. And SB 78 by Senator Glazier, which would specify when a court shall issue a finding that a claimant is entitled to approval of a claim for compensation under Penal Code Section 4900, was also presented to the governor. Finally, SB 544 by Senator Laird, which would amend the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act to remove certain teleconference requirements, was enrolled and will also go to the governor. The final version of this bill would require at least one member to be physically present at every board meeting. Those are the highlights, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Officer Cardenas. Sounds like you've been really busy. A lot of bills this year. Just to refresh my memory, the 78 was the on the 4900 cases was the one that brought equivalency to the standards applied whether people or claimants went through the district attorney's office as opposed to the attorney general. Am I remembering that one correctly, or is it a different one?
Yes, you're correct, Chair. Basically, it takes SB 446 and makes it applicable in the Superior Court so that those who are innocent could move for a finding in the Superior Court. And if the DA fails to object with clear and convincing evidence, then it would mean automatic compensation when they come to Cal VCB.
Got it. Thank you. So it's just making an equivalency between the VCB and the Superior Courts. Got it.
Correct.
Any other questions or comments from board members?
Is there any public comment on this item via Zoom or here in Sacramento? Seeing none, is there any public comment on this item from anyone at the Martinez location? Seeing none, we will move to, thank you. We will move to item 6, which is the contract update, which will be presented by Deputy Executive Officer Sean Ramirez.
Good morning, board members. For today's contract report, item 6, all items are informational and do not require board action, though I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions or comments from the board on the contract update? Thank you, officer.
Is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none, is there any public comment on this item from anyone in Martinez location? Seeing none, we will move to item 7, which is the request for authority to begin the rulemaking process for amendments to the California Code of Regulations, which will be presented by Senior Attorney Sarah Harburger.
Good morning. Good morning, members of the board. My name is Sarah Harbarger, and I'm a
Pull it up.
senior.
There you go. There you go.
I'm a senior attorney at Cal VCB. Today, I'm seeking authorization to begin the rulemaking process for the proposed regulatory changes found under agenda item number 7 in your board binder. As a bit of background on the process so far, on January 19th of 2023, we came before the board and received authorization to submit the rulemaking calendar to begin the process of revising these regulations. After this approval, staff held internal discussions and proposed changes to multiple regulations with the goal of providing the public with additional clarity on program requirements. After careful consideration and deliberation, Cal VCB staff have proposed modifications to the 9 regulations that relate to victims' claims that are in today's meeting items. The need to modify these regulations is twofold. First, it's to comply with case law and statute. And second, as Cal VCB staff have processed victim claims, they've seen the need to clarify procedures for victims. So these regulations will increase transparency for the public on how victims' claims are processed. I'm going to go through now a few notable changes with the 9 regulations, but I'm not going to go over every single change. For 649.4, this clarifies that a victim who is injured or killed while incarcerated is ineligible to receive compensation pursuant to Government Code Section 13956, Subdivision C. 649.7 adopts the ability for Cal VCB to accept digital signatures, and it allows the board to accept summary reports from law enforcement, which will improve claim eligibility processing. 649.15 clarifies additional factors staff may consider to find good cause to allow a victim to file an application outside of the statutory timeline. 649.16 clarifies that a victim is only eligible as either a direct victim or a derivative victim per crime, not both, which is as required by the statutory compensation limit in Government Code Section 13957, Subdivision B, which is $70,000 per victim per crime at this time. 649.18 clarifies the order in which funeral burial expenses will be paid by staff. 649.19 clarifies the type of evidence that staff may consider to determine if residential security expenses are directly related to the crime. 649.24 and 649.28 explains the steps that the board may take if they determine that a provider should be held accountable due to fraud or audit discrepancies, and provides clear due process rights for providers. 649.50 modifies funeral burial expenses to include all minors who are passengers in a DUI collision instead of just those who are under the age of 14. During staff discussions, there have been identified other regulations that could benefit from clarity, like income loss in 649.32. Based on this noted need, Cal VCB staff plan to propose additional regulation modifications in the next calendar year. Cal VCB staff noted that the last time they completed a large regulation packet like this was in 2012, and they've noted the need to have ongoing updates with shorter gaps in those timeframes between projects. So the purpose of these 9 regulations in front of you is to assist the public in understanding the requirements to obtain victim benefits. Additionally, the 2 regulations will assist providers in understanding what may happen if there's fraud or audit discrepancies. The goal is really to increase transparency with the public to improve claim processing. The next steps, if the board authorizes to begin the rulemaking process, are: first, the regulation packet will be mailed to the Office of Administrative Law. Then on September 29th of 2023, we plan to post the regulation packet on the Cal VCB website and mail it to interested stakeholders. That will open the 45-day comment period to receive comments from the public, and the comment period will close on November 13th of 2023. At that point, Cal VCB staff will carefully review and consider all comments and determine if additional modifications to the regulations will need to be made. At that point, Cal VCB staff will come back before the board, either to request additional modifications to the regulations or the next steps in the process. And I'm available for any questions that you may have on this regulation proposal.
Thank you, Council. Are there any questions or comments from board members on these regulations?
This is Dinah Beckton in the Martinez location. And by the way, there are no public members here, so just so you know when you're asking. I wondered, in terms of the process, I see the opportunity for public comment from interested stakeholders. In addition to mailing that packet to interested stakeholders, is there going to be some sort of a notice that is maybe on the website, or so that if we haven't identified all of those who might want to comment, there is some notification in a public way that there's this opportunity to comment? That's one question I had. And then after we receive the public comment and staff has an opportunity to review those comments and come back to us, that is that process going to happen in a public meeting so that there's additional opportunity for the public to comment on any proposed changes that come out of the comments?
Yes, so in regards to your first question, what we've spoken with our IT department, and we will post the entire regulation packet on our website on September 29th of 2023. This will allow access to all members of the public to review it and to provide comment. And it will remain on the website for the 45-day period. Then, depending on what happens next, it will be updated so that the public still will have access to the information. In regards to your second question, how the Office of Administrative Law requires Cal VCB staff to review all comments, summarize them, and respond to them. So that comment information will be provided to the board so that you will be able to see all comments along with Cal VCB's responses of whether we agree with the modification, or if not, why we don't think it would be appropriate for that regulation. So that will be a part of your future board items before the regulations would become enacted.
And if I may, part 3, I guess, of that question, the response to the public comment, whether you agree or disagree, and the reasoning, will that also be placed on the public websites for others to see?
Yes, it would be. We will be publishing on the website the entire packets that we are sending to the of Administrative Law, because that is all part of the public record of this rulemaking process.
Thank you.
Sure. Thank you very much. First off, kudos to the work of the staff. This is having run a rulemaking process before. It is difficult to say the least, and combing through this, and then what lies ahead is all hard work. So really appreciate the effort. I just wanted to check in. Similar to Member Becton on the process, it sounds like we're going to have a great opportunity for public input. Do you have a list of stakeholders at this point that you plan to outreach to? And so I would just encourage that to be, whatever list you do plan to use, to be as expansive as possible. So pause there for a second.
Yes, we are currently working with our legislative team to discuss prior lists of stakeholders where we've sent out regulation packages, both in 2012 and then last year when we did a regulation packet. And we're trying to ensure that everyone is captured that may be an interested stakeholder.
Great. I appreciate that. And the question is really aimed at just making sure that to emphasize the point of that outreach here is key, I think. And then, is there a point at which the process would trigger another public hearing for the regulations? I didn't hear that in the response to Member Becton.
You mean a public hearing? If you mean a public hearing in which the public has the opportunity to come in person, no one in the public has yet requested that, and so none have been scheduled. We do not have a planned meeting for that, but the public will have the opportunity to comment at the next board meeting in which these are brought. And if someone does request a public hearing, CalVCB will facilitate that within our ability.
Just want to make sure we're responsive to those requests as they come in. Thank you. And then I just had, if you'll indulge, just a couple of clarifying questions real quick. One was on 647.5D. If a crime report is missing, this is for the summary report, basically. And I guess the question is, so that I understand, is this implementing, what are the impacts of this change? Let me just ask it that way.
I believe you're referring to 649.7D.
Yeah, 649.7D.
Yes.
Sorry.
So in some cases, we have situations where law enforcement has not concluded their investigation, but we do have victims who have already applied to the board. And so in order to expedite the eligibility processing and not wait for the full crime report to be completed, which can take sometimes a year or more, we're creating this situation where if the officer that has the firsthand knowledge of the crime is willing to write a summary report, CalVCB may then use that for eligibility determinations. And so this is to help increase the processing time for eligibility determinations in cases where there are extensive investigations.
Great, thank you. That's very helpful. I appreciate it. And then the only other question I had, sort of in this first cut of this, is on 649.19 on the residential security changes. This is on section C, defining what evidence would count. And I just wanted to understand if these were new criteria, or is this just sort of a cataloging of the criteria you've been using already, or is this conforming with new legislation? What's the genesis of these criteria?
Yes. Currently in statute and in regulation, there is no specific criteria that explain what is needed to show that the residential security is directly related to the crime. And so this is criteria that is currently used by staff, but we wanted to make it fully transparent to the public that these are items that may be considered, but it is not limited to these items, but we wanted to provide the ability for transparency and consistency of application for residential security to assist victims in understanding how they can receive this compensation.
Perfect. And I think that's it for me. Thank you very much for indulging.
Thank you, Council. I want to echo the comments of my colleagues. This is really excellent work, and it sounds like it's overdue. So I'm glad that you're getting to it. Just a procedural question: has there been any sort of stakeholder outreach on the front end, talking with groups that we know are interested in this about what we're planning to do?
We have not done pre-stakeholder outreach in this case, and we're hoping that many stakeholders will utilize the 45-day comment period and reach out so that we can consider all of their thoughts and ideas and proposed modifications.
Thank you. If there are no further questions or comments, do I have a motion to approve item 7?
I move to authorize the executive officer to begin the rulemaking process for amending sections 649.4, 649.7, 0.15, 0.16, 0.18, 19, 24, 28, and 50 of the California Code of Regulations and to execute and submit any required documents to the Office of Administrative Law.
I'll second.
Is there any public comment on this item via Zoom or here in Sacramento? Is there any public comment on this item from anyone at Martinez location? Seeing none.
Council, please call the roll.
The motion before the board is authorization for the executive officer to begin the rulemaking process for amending the proposed sections of the California Code of Regulations and to execute and submit any required documents to the Office of Administrative Law. Member Becton.
Aye.
Mr. Johnson.
Aye.
Chair Ravel.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Item 8 is the Penal Code Section 4900 claim of Jesse Wagner, which will be presented by Chief Counsel Kim Gutierrez.
Good morning. On July 11th of 2022, Jesse Wagner submitted an application as an erroneously convicted felon to the California Victim Compensation Board. That application is based on his 3 convictions in 2005 for robbery, false imprisonment, and impersonating a peace officer, which convictions were vacated and dismissed in 2017. The Attorney General objected to this claim pursuant to Penal Code Section 4900B and Section 4902. The proposed decision recommends denial of the claim as the Attorney General has met its burden of proving by clear and convincing evidence that Mr. Wagner committed the crimes of robbery, false imprisonment, and impersonating a police officer. Mr. Wagner is represented in these proceedings by Stephen Allen, and the Office of the Attorney General is represented by Deputy Attorney General Britton Lacey.
Is Mr. Wagner present either? I don't see him either.
I don't see either one.
Okay, if not, then I think we can move to Ms. Lacey from the Attorney General's office.
Good morning. The Office of the Attorney General agrees with Hearing Officer Simpton's analysis and proposed decision and requests that the board deny Mr. Wagner's claim.
Thank you, Counsel. Is there any discussion on this item by the board? Do I have a motion on item 8?
I'll move to approve the hearing officer's decision on item 8.
I second.
Is there any public comment on this item via Zoom? Is there any public comment on this item at the Martinez location? Seeing none.
Counsel, please call the roll.
The motion for consideration is adoption of the hearing officer's proposed decision in the Penal Code Section 4900 matter of Jesse Wagner. Member Becton,
Aye.
Member Johnson,
Aye.
Chair Ravel.
Aye.
Motion passes.
And the board will now convene into closed session under Government Code Section 11126 sub E to discuss pending litigation, and under subdivision C3 to discuss numbers 1 through 105 of the Victim Compensation Program.
Let's see, where's the,
Board is reconvening into open session under Government Code Section 11126 sub C3. Do I have a motion for numbers 101 through 105 of the Victim Compensation Program?
I move approval of numbers 1 through 105 of the Victim Compensation Board.
A second.
Council, please call the roll.
Motion for consideration and approval is, or excuse me, the motion under consideration is approval of numbers 1 through 105 of the Victim Compensation Program. Member Becton.
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Chair Ravel.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Is there any other business that needs to come before the board today? Seeing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Council, please call the roll.
Member Becton.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Chair Ravel.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. The next meeting is scheduled to occur on November 16th, 2023.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.